Se7en is a really good movie that has a really weird ass title. I don't know if you guys have noticed this yet, but the 7 in the middle actually looks like a V that was rotated 90 degrees to the left, which is really cool because it ends up actually still spelling the name correctly. The movie is about two detectives that are trying to catch a serial killer that has made it his mission to kill 7 victims according to the 7 deadly sins, which are gluttony, greed, sloth, lust, pride, envy, and wrath. Our two main characters are Detective David Mills and Detective William Somerset. David is a young, inexperienced, stubborn, hopeful, and very emotionally driven detective that just transferred to the department with his wife that he had been dating since high school. And William is an old, jaded, stoic, incredibly wise and meticulous detective that has seen so much horrible shit in his life that he just really wants to retire as early as possible. As I said earlier, this is a really good movie, but my analysis is going to focus mainly on the ending because, to me, that's the most interesting part of the film. So, that's the official spoiler warning. I feel like we all know why it was pretty dumb for David to shoot Johnny in the head at the end, but I want to really dive deep and explain my personal problem with his decision. So for those of you that either don't care about spoilers or don't remember what happened, the killer's name is John Doe, and after killing 5 people, towards the end of the movie, he just randomly turns himself in. He promises to plead guilty with a full confession if David and William follow him to the location of his 2 final victims. They get to the location and the plot twist is that he killed David's wife Tracy and their unborn child, beheaded her and put her head in a box for David to see because he was envious of his life and he wanted David to get really angry and kill him so that they would end up being his 2 final victims, envy and wrath. Now, David's impulsive and emotionally driven decision to shoot John in the head rubbed me the wrong way because in this life, the best way to get revenge on somebody is to move on and become a better person than you were yesterday. If a person in your life does a bad thing to you, being petty or vengeful or spiteful won't really gain you anything at the end of the day because you will just end up hurting yourself in the long run. There are 2 biblical philosophies that I follow and try to remember every single day. You can't repay evil with evil, and the best way to defeat somebody is to disarm them with kindness. If somebody does an evil thing to you, the best thing you can do is move on because if you go back and try to do an evil thing in return, then now you're no better than that person and you have no moral high ground to stand on. You're just 2 evil people that are doing evil things to each other, which is sad because now you're just validating the other person's actions and giving them more motive and ammunition to use against you. When the situation gets to the court of public opinion, the story is no longer this person did a bad thing to me. The narrative has been flipped and the bad person now has a laundry list of equally bad things you did to them that validates all the bad things they are doing to you. And even if they started it, you no longer have a leg to stand on by saying they hurt you first because you've already entered the mud with them and probably even done worse atrocities than the original bad thing that they did to you. But if you choose to repay their irrational bad deed with calm, level-headed kindness or worse, silence and indifference, then not only do you make them look stupid because it's going to be real awkward for them when you respond with indifference and directly confront them about the shitty thing they did to you, especially if it's a friend or a person you're in a relationship with. But now, they have no reason to continually do bad things to you because in the court of public opinion, you have the moral high ground and they are just this crazy person that's trying to throw mud at you so they can bring you down to their level, which is all they really want. The popular saying, hurt people is applicable here because in reality, they're just an unhappy person that wants to make you unhappy as well so that they can have somebody to play with. If you allow them to drag you down to their mud pit and you stay there with them in the filthy mud of evil doing, vengefulness, pettiness and all-round negativity, then they've won because they just successfully made your life as horrible as theirs. Alternatively, if you choose to stay above them and refuse to retaliate in kind, not only will everybody be on your side, which is very important because our society is structured around mutual agreement of people, so you do have to care about what people think about you to some degree, but you will also just be an overall better and happier human being with a more fulfilling life as a result of ignoring their negativity and choosing to fill your life with positivity, productivity and progress. Remember that if you stop to throw stones at every dog that barks at you, you will never make it to your destination. I truly believe that the key to life is to remain indifferent at all times, focusing only on what is important while ignoring the things that don't bring value to your life. Now, obviously the situation was very different for David. I'm not saying that he should have given a big hug to the guy that just fucking beheaded the love of his life and start complimenting him with all sorts of kind words. No, that would be very fucking crazy. Before David shot him, John had only partially ruined his life, but he still had his freedom and he still had his youth. So, if he had followed the right path and refused to repay evil with evil, he could heal, rebuild, move on with his life, continue to grow, and John would have been nothing more than another tiny, momentary speck within an indifferent universe. The indifferent universe being David in this analogy. He could have carried on with his life without allowing John's actions to hold any real significance over the rest of his days. But he chose to give John the power to completely ruin his life by not choosing to move on, not choosing to ignore the crazy person throwing mud at him, not choosing to be above the negativity while actively surrounding himself with productivity and progress. Instead, he impulsively chose to repay evil with evil, allowed John to successfully drag him down to his mud pit, make him as unhappy as he is, and completely ruin his life. But in this particular case, it was much worse because he actually ended up going to prison for the rest of his life. Right before he actually shoots him, David contemplates what to do, has a quick flashback of his wife in his bed, then immediately shoots John Doe in the head. He falls to the ground. David empties his gun in his body, holds a dissatisfied and defeated look on his face, then walks away. That look on his face is important because that was when he realized that shooting John wasn't going to bring his wife back to life. It didn't undo all the pain he had caused him, and it definitely didn't make him feel any better about his situation. I'm pointing this out because this is exactly what I'm saying. Revenge is never worth it. You won't feel any better about yourself, you won't be validated in the eyes of society, and you won't undo whatever bad thing that was done to you. All you get is a brief feeling of relief for about 2 seconds before you immediately begin to feel shitty because you realize that you're now sitting in a pit completely covered in mud. I'm well aware that most of this is easier said than done, and it can be hard to not get carried away by our emotions. But just take a look at David. All he had to do was walk away, and he would have had the rest of his life ahead of him. But because of a mistake caused by a split-second impulsive, emotionally driven decision that could have very easily been avoided, he's about to spend the rest of his life in prison, where he will never get the chance to feel the warm touch of a woman again. To whoever is still listening at this point, never give those that hurt you the satisfaction of seeing you unravel in an emotional outburst. Become an indifferent universe, and everything else will be nothing more than a tiny, momentary speck to be forgotten and washed away in the vast cosmos of your existence. Subscribe to Patreon for the cartoon commentaries and the member-controlled podcast. The first one is going to be a weird commentary. We're doing commentaries on Ben 10 episodes right now, and there are 3 tiers: the $5, the $10, and the $15 tier. The $5 tier gets 1 commentary episode per month, the $10 tier gets 2 commentary episodes per month, and the $15 tier gets 4 commentary episodes per month. Then for the podcast, the title is going to be Weird Thoughts, and it's mainly going to be controlled by the $15 tier. Those guys can submit questions, topics. I think that's mostly it. There's not much else after that. You can submit questions and topics. Then the whole podcast is going to be me answering those questions and giving my thoughts on those topics. Then after we're done with that, I can now move on to the section where I would be reacting to like Reddit stories, Reddit text messages, just any fucking crazy shit I find on Reddit, because that place is fucking filled with crazy stuff all the time. So that's what's going to happen with the podcast. It's going to be once a week, and every member will get a new podcast episode every single week. But the $15 tier, those guys will have supreme control over the podcast because they can submit questions and topics that will actually lead and be the main driving point of the podcast before I get into the Reddit reactions. There are also 2 more tiers for my Patreon members of the Big Pocket Persuasion, but you find out about that when you read about it on the actual Patreon page itself. So subscribe to Patreon, link in the description. Don't repay evil with evil, rather repay evil with either kindness, indifference, or silence. Well, this was fun. Alright, later niggas.